that fifth agreement, be skeptical, but learn to listen, is really such a deep foundation of, I believe, shamanic practice, because we have to simply show up and keep our awareness right here. So we're not believing anything, but we're also believing everything. So can you share about that? And we'll weave it then into doing shamanic ritual as a way to learn to navigate in a new manner.
Yes, it's a beautiful imagination. I always like to use imagination because that's how I do vision questing. I just like to imagine that you wake up in a world full of stories, and none of the stories are real. They're just stories of humanity, mankind. How can 5,000 years of stories be real? So when I walk in life, I see all these storytellers walking, all these people who believe in different stories, that my story, doesn't really matter. I put it aside because I'm visiting. I begin listening how people dream. I can talk about awareness and the parasite mind to people who believe about aliens, people who believe about ghosts. And, and really they just join that world. And I can speak to them like if I was speaking to somebody who was a lawyer or someone who is a judge. It's because, we all have different ways of seeing life. We all have ways of seeing the dream, and we all have our own individual dream. So when we don't try to conquer or impose the way that we dream, it's just about witnessing. And the fifth agreement is the best tool for me because I don't believe myself, I don't believe them, and I don't believe anything else. And that's my father's one of the main teachings that he teaches us. Don't believe anything, don't believe yourself, and especially don't believe them. Their opinions, they don't matter. They're creating stories. The judgmental stories can hurt you. Your judgmental stories can hurt yourself too. And the dream can hurt you too. Like right now, we can say, I wish humanity will make it. Like they asked my father a long time ago, I wish humanity will make it. And he responded, it's making it. And right now we can say, oh, how can you say that when all these rights are happening here, when this injustice is happening here, when racism is growing? And he responded, imagine waking up 1,000 years in the time of the Inquisition in England so you can understand the language, knowing what you know now. How long would it take for you to tell everybody, what you're studying, how to hunt witches, how to make deal with the devil, all those books that you're reading, they're nonsense. They're not real. Because there's awareness now. You don't believe in those stories, but they do. So how long would it take them to, accuse you of witchcraft, deal with the devil and put you to the gallows pole? We are growing as a humanity. But the beautiful thing is to not believe all the old wounds. The scorpion that's stinging somebody's own stinger, to not hurt us with the old judgment, because sometimes we already healed an old wound, but we reopen it. And you can see right now, the injustice is so big in the world that people are reopening wounds because that's where they feel comfortable, because they are uncomfortable in the unknown. People who get educated with racism and discrimination, they want to make their parents proud, the bigger racists, and they don't even realize what they're doing. They're just trapped in a nightmare. So when we begin talking to somebody who just has an epiphany of this life and doesn't want it anymore, is to, know that we didn't know what we're doing. So don't be hard on yourself with the judgments. You didn't know. You were stuck in a story, and no thoughts that you believe in about yourself, they're not even real. So could you imagine how powerful we could be, how heart can open up when we know that those self-judgment that we tell ourselves is not real? Then we begin to heal. So if we heal ourselves, we can see how we stop ourselves. And then when the person who judged himself, imagine being racist and doesn't want to be a racist anymore, and he begins seeing all that people did, he didn't do it. He was born into a world that he was dreaming that way. He just woke up from a nightmare. And I tell you, all of us are waking up from a certain kind of nightmare like that. I woke up in a dream of junkie. Why do we do junkie? When they put us all this poison in, we don't even have a chance. But the love for ourselves does. And this is when we don't believe the outside dream, that you're a junkie, you can never grow, or you believe yourself, oh, I'm a junkie, can never grow, or you believe them, junkies will never grow. No, we see how we were destroying our life, and we want to change that. We begin being skeptical of the negativity that we cannot change, that we will always be a junkie. No, we had enough of that world, so we wake up. So a racist one day can wake up. He's done of that world. Someone who lives in an abusive relationship where they're getting physically hit by their husbands or their wife, doesn't matter. they're getting abused, they wake up and say, I don't want that in my life anymore, especially when they see the little children walking and seeing that, because that's their destiny. When you notice that that's the destiny for children and the future, we change our own and deal with ourselves, because if we don't deal with ourselves, how can we let this parasite beast come to the little minds? And one beautiful teaching about Bruce Lee was he didn't want to pass this negativity to his children. So he broke all the corruption from his kung fu training, but he also dealt with the parasite in his life because he didn't want to pass his parasite to the children. And it's like my father did with all of us, because when I said all of us, I don't just say his children, I mean all his apprentices, because he didn't want to pass his parasite to anybody else. And when we wake up not believing our own lies, I don't want to pass my parasite to the next generation, because I see a junkie who's 12 years old and I can tell him, you can change your life. You don't have to believe the outside dream to suppress you. Why? Because I've done it before and it can be done. And that's why it's so important for everybody to speak their truth, to come out of their darkness so they can heal themselves. Because when we begin healing ourselves, we find our own light. And that's when the ceremony becomes so powerful, because we're not doing it for validation, for people to see us. We're one with God. We're one with nature. We're one Mother Earth. We feel it inside of us. So everything we do is an act of power, especially not believing the temptation that irritate us, the temptation that make us lose with envy and hatred and jealousy. We're fine just the way we are. We are alive. What else do we need? The parasite mind will offer you many things, but be skeptical about that. You have everything now.